Action.
The United States is in a war, and I know what you're thinking. This is not the war in Iraq. This war is being fought on our very own soil. The location? The Florida Everglades. We are fighting an adversary that is much more cunning, has better camouflage, is better armed, is a master in the ambush attack, and can strike at literally any moment. The culprit? The Burmese python. Like in any war, one must understand one's opponent. We are facing the third largest snake in the world, which can grow up to 18 feet long and weigh 250 pounds. Burmese python has better camouflage than even the best military operative, with large brown spots camouflaging its massive body in the dense underbrush. Originally, Burmese pythons are found in Southeast Asia, from India to Malaysia and Indonesia, where the climate rarely dips below 60 degrees. Not only are Burmese pythons prolific land animals, but they are very aquatic as well. Burmese pythons can pretty much eat anything they can fit their mouths around, including feral pigs, monkeys, gazelles, and even in some parts of the range there are even known man-eaters. The Burmese python is our most formidable adversary because of its immense size and threat to the human population. However, Florida also plays host to many other invasive species, such as the green iguana, the Nile monitor, and the African rock python. In order to combat the problem, one must understand how the problem originally started in the first place. There are two conflicting theories to how the Burmese python ended up in the Florida Everglades. Legislatures are quick to point the finger at the pet industry by irresponsible pet owners releasing their snakes into the Everglades. Over 1 million Burmese pythons were imported into the United States over the past decade for the pet trade. However, I have kept Burmese pythons for over 5 years now, and speaking from personal experience, captive snakes simply do not have the life skills it takes to hunt in the wild and to avoid human conflict. Scientists, on the other hand, have another theory. In 1992, Hurricane Andrew hit Miami with brute force, causing over $1 billion in damage in Miami alone. Only a mile from the Everglades in Miami laid one of the largest reptile holding facilities in the country, which was estimated to have held over 10,000 Burmese python hatchlings. Genetic studies have confirmed that the Burmese pythons in the Everglades are very closely related, and farmers in that area have only seen the Burmese pythons after Hurricane Andrew. So this is the most likely cause for the reason Burmese pythons are in the Everglades. As far as the other endangered species go, the green iguanas are most likely introduced because of the tourist trade, because a lot of people like to feed the iguanas like people feed the pigeons in New York City. The battle lines have clearly been drawn, and now, what is the Floridian government doing to combat the Burmese python problem? Researchers from the University in Florida are collaborating with the United States Geological Survey, as well as scientists from the U.S. Wildlife and Parks, to investigate how the Burmese python will impact the ecosystem in South Florida, as well as developing tools to capture the Burmese pythons. Researchers are currently using radio telemetry techniques to determine how pythons are using the habitat and tracking their movements in the Everglades. This method is also used to find groups of Burmese pythons during the breeding season. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, over 17 Burmese pythons have been captured and successfully been surgically implanted with high-frequency radio transmitters so scientists can track their every location. Initial results by radio telemetry techniques have yielded that male Burmese pythons travel a lot during breeding season, while females are mostly stationary. When teachers know where Burmese pythons are located and what type of habitats they are using, this makes capture and removal efforts more effective. Like many other constrictors, Burmese pythons use constriction to kill their prey. Burmese pythons in South Florida have been reported to eat animals as large as a white-tailed deer or an adult American alligator. As Burmese pythons expand into the Everglades, it is important to know what kind of prey species will be affected. Personnel from the U.S. Wildlife and Parks are required to humanely euthanize any Burmese pythons they come across, and then researchers from the University of Florida examine the digestive contents of their stomach to determine what the Burmese pythons have been eating by examining the hair, the bones, and the teeth left in the gullet of the Burmese pythons. However, Florida is lacking in the mesopredators, which are the middle-level consumers in an ecosystem. Previously, the foxes, the coyotes, and the elusive Florida panther, which has almost become extinct, has used to fill this void. But since these animals are becoming less and less common, Burmese pythons can be used to prey upon the rats and rabbits that are plaguing the population in Florida. Florida and many other states have passed legislation to regulate the ownership of large constricting snakes. Releasing any exotic wildlife into Florida is considered a first-degree misdemeanor, resulting in a year of prison or a fine up to $1,000. Further regulatory action has been taken in 2008 under the Reptiles of Concern, or ROCS program, which currently includes Burmese pythons, African rock pythons, amethystine pythons, reticulated pythons, and the Nile monitor lizard. Under the ROCS program, any keeper of a constricting snake is required to pay $100 for a permit, and snakes bigger than 2 inches in diameter are required to be surgically implanted with a microchip. Many other states have passed similar bills, but in 2008, Senate Bill S-373 was proposed that would ban the ownership of all constricting snakes in the United States, but fortunately this bill was unsuccessful. State and wildlife officials have special hunting seasons to stop the spread of Burmese pythons in the Everglades. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission says anyone who is willing to pay the $26 for the permit can kill reptiles on state-managed lands from March 8th to April 17th. This season is open for Burmese pythons, African rock pythons, green anacondas, and the Nile monitor lizards. This has made the invasive species problem a household name. The National Geographic Channel currently airs several documentaries educating the public on the invasive species problem in Florida. There are 2 regular series that run, called Python Hunters and Swamp Men, which go into a deeper detail about what is happening in Florida and gives quality information based on the pet owner's point of view. Florida, along with the 3 hosts that are on the Python Hunters, has adopted a program called Amnesty Day, which is an effort to reduce the number of species that are being released into the Florida Everglades, where pet owners can relinquish their unwanted pets without penalty. The goal of this program is to foster responsible pet ownership. Amnesty Days happen on the last Saturday of every month and happen around the state of Florida. Current exotic pet owners and prospective owners are encouraged to attend to gather information and to see what their pets will look like when they are fully grown. The media has communicated several inaccuracies about the invasive species epidemic in Florida, and I personally would like to clear up some of these myths. One thing you often hear is that Burmese pythons have no natural predators in the ecosystem in Florida. Hatchling Burmese pythons are only about 18 inches long, and they are very vulnerable prey species by captive species such as cats and dogs, but are also preyed upon by wild birds and other species. Adults are being preyed upon by the American alligator, which they are competing against for the apex predator position in the ecosystem. Florida has also experienced recent cold snaps in the winters with temperatures reaching almost below freezing. This has killed off many of the breeding population because larger snakes need more heat to maintain their body temperature. Reptiles also represent the smallest portion of invasive species in the United States, and only one other snake was ever put on the injurious species list under the Lacey Act, which is the brown tree snake, which was introduced by Guam. It was introduced by the federal government by stowing away on military equipment, and there is no evidence supporting that the pet trade had anything to do with the release of this species. Another myth is that good science is being used to promote the legislation that is making our hobby more difficult. The science is being cherry-picked in order to support a one-sided argument, and science that does contradict the so-called fairy tale is being created by self-serving scientists that the media sensation is being ignored. But the real question is, how could this problem been avoided in the first place? The solution is simple. Education is the most important step in educating the public about what their pets will grow to when they reach their full adult size. Most people end up purchasing their Burmese python when they see the cute little 18-inch hatchling on the dealer table or in their local pet store, but in a year or two are soon confronted with a 10-foot-long snake which is difficult to handle and house. Most zoos will not take any more exotic species because they are already overrun, and most pet adoption centers do not take reptiles because they fear they'll contract salmonella. If you know somebody that's considering getting a large constricting snake, I highly discourage it, unless they have a lot of experience working with reptiles. Large constricting snakes have also proved deadly as pets. In July 2009, a 2-year-old toddler was strangled by a family's pet Burmese python in Florida. Unfortunately, this case is anything but unique, and education is needed to prevent this problem from ever happening again. The Floridian ecosystem is on the verge of ecological Armageddon. As a person in the reptile community, we need to educate people so we can thoroughly enjoy our hobby. Bullet wounds have already been inflicted in the Burmese python population that are starting to decline. We have won many battles, so it is hopeful that we will win the war.